I got good news and bad news. Bad first. Somebody is trying to delete history. See, if you type in the word Moor into Wikipedia today, you get this. The term Moor is an exonym first used by Christian Europeans to designate the Muslim populations of the Maghreb, Al-Andalus, Sicily and Malta during the Middle Ages.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Strangely enough, Wikipedia seems to have forgotten legions of Roman, certainly pre-medieval and actual medieval sources using the term Moor specifically to depict blacks in North Africa. We've gone over this in past videos, but here's the thing. Have the authors of this Wikipedia article actually forgotten? Consider that the most famous Moor anywhere in Western consciousness is this guy, Shakespeare's Othello. Yes, he's fictional, but he's just as important to gaining an anthropological understanding of who the Moors were as anything else. How? Well, the character of Othello is one of many snapshots of what members of Elizabethan high society meant and understood by the term Moor. And their opinion matters because they were just the kind of people rich enough at the time to travel back and forth from North Africa and the Maghreb like it was nothing, sending envoys and merchants to and fro across the Mediterranean. Okay, hang on a minute, because it seems like even with Othello, there are people now pretending that in creating his famous Moor, Shakespeare could have meant something other than a black African man. Don't believe me? Well, check out this bizarre article from Slate Online which asks, would we say Othello is black today? And then there's people like Professor Honingham who write that descriptions of Moors in Shakespeare's time were, quote, vague. Methinks the bard was certain of his Moor. Here, you profile him. In the play, he's described as having, quote, thick lips, a sooty bosom, and was as black as a, quote, black ram, even a, quote, blacker devil. This guy doesn't exactly fit that description. Maybe the devil part. Okay, low blow. But fast forward to today and the authors of this Wikipedia article have done their utmost best to scrub out any link whatsoever of Moor to the term black. The closest the article gets is in a weirdly written denouement in which it devotes all of one sentence to speaking of black Moors. One sentence. And even then the authors show you this. Okay, why is this image funny? Stick around and I'll explain, promise. But for now, ask yourself, could Wikipedia, Slate, Honingham, all these people really be ignorant of the abundance of historical sources tying the Moors to black Africans specifically? Or could something else be going on? Something like what Professor Dana Marniche Reynolds calls the denigrification of history, a bizarro world 1984 style attempt to retrospectively write black people out of everything that matters in the human story, even on the African continent. It wouldn't be the first time this has happened. Remember when they said these couldn't have been made by these people, and that it had to have been done by the lost Caucasian civilization of Atlantis? Check out our expose on that whole drama. But if this is what's happening, if indeed there is this attempt to whitewash the Negro from the pages of history, then society is currently engaged in one of the worst forms of gaslighting ever known to man. How? Well, Hollywood allegedly can't get enough of the whole "would somebody please think of the blacks" act right now.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
I mean, they're casting Anne Boleyn, Achilles, everyone and their white mama as black. Apart from people who historically we know were black, or at least were more likely to be black than, say, the Vikings. Well, in this video, we'll let you decide what's really going on. We'll park the lonely incel "you was never Kang's" crew to one side and show you 10 Moorish rulers, movers and shakers who we know from records were black men. Historically, rest assured there are more than 10, but we'll limit the list to just 10. One thing will be sure by the end of this video: you'll be asking, when can the history of a people be legitimately called black, if not with the Moors? By posing that question, we're not denying the contributions of others to North African history, so-called white Moors, or what Renaissance writers called tawny Moors. What we are saying is that credit ought to be given where credit is due. North Africa once looked much different than it does today and was built as much by, and in some cases more so, by black Africans as anyone else. So that the next time Hollywood wishes to stir the racial pot by casting Henry VIII as black, we can all call them out not by insisting they begin telling black stories starting halfway down into Africa with the kingdoms of Benin and the Congo, but by beginning at the very top of Africa, as high up as the Maghreb and all the way down. Now, as always, all the historical and academic sources used are below in the descriptions, so if you want an argument, you have to take it up with the dead, ancient and medieval historians I'll be citing. Postcards from the funny farm are not welcome. Now, about the good news I mentioned at the beginning, I haven't forgotten. I'll give you that at the end of this video, so stick around. There's just one more thing I need to let you in on before we begin. Newsflash, the powers that be don't tend to like channels like this one, and we know why. For one thing, we melanated people are used to fighting against the grain wherever we find ourselves. But hey, as they say, pressure creates diamonds, fire refines gold. But here's my task to you. I need you to help us beat the algo. How? Well, if you enjoy this content, I want you to like and, even more importantly, share it across your Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever. Notice I didn't say subscribe. Please do that too, don't get me wrong. But for us, sharing and liking is key to our battle plan. See, the algorithm is supposed to push content the more it's liked and shared. So if we get 100 likes in the first 24 hours and as little as 10 commenters telling us below that they shared us, and we're still under 1,000 views after day one of this video, then we'll know how to strap up differently for YouTube in the future. Right, let's get into what we're all here for. We're going to start in Egypt with the longest reigning Caliph of the Fatimid Caliphate, Caliph Al-Mustansir Billah, who reigned from 1036 when he was just 7 years old to 1094 when he died aged 63. There's no doubt Caliph Billah was black. We know for certain he was the son of a black woman from neighboring Nubia. Researchers Holt and Daly in their History of the Sudan confirm that much. But for the first few months of his ascension to the Egyptian Caliphate, it was Caliph Billah's Nubian mother who had to manage state affairs on behalf of her young son. Now, the fact that his family hailed from the southern regions of Egypt bleeding into Nubia, areas well beyond those coastal regions in the north long dominated by lighter-skinned relative newcomers, well, this left a pretty dire legacy for Billah's later years in power. Those last years were fraught with civil war between black troops from the Aswan region of Egypt, loyal to the Caliph, fighting lighter-skinned mercenary forces from Turkey who the Caliph had invited into Egypt earlier in his reign. The Turks would ultimately win out, but none of that takes away from the fact that Caliph Billah reigned for about 60 years through a period that saw it all: prosperity at the beginning of his reign, through a devastating famine and civil war in later years. His memorial wall, or mihrab, is at the Mosque of Ibn Tulun in Egypt today, and is evidence of a time when for more than half a century a black man was the face of Moorish Egypt. That's 60 years out of the 100 that made up the 11th century. Let that sink in. Okay, now move your compass right across North Africa westward, and you come to Morocco, where during the reign of Caliph Billah, another black man was making quite the name for himself. If you've watched some of our past videos, you'll know who this man is. This is the representation of Abu Bakr ibn Umar on a late medieval Portuguese porcelain chart. It depicts a black man on a camel in a region roughly meant to represent Morocco and northern West Africa. Above him you can read the words Rex Abu Bakr or King Abu Bakr. Couldn't be clearer, right? Okay, so what is Abu Bakr ibn Umar famous for? Well, he was known for being a formidable ruler and excellent military tactician who helped the Almoravid Moors gain control of northwest Africa and southern Spain. Ibn Umar himself invaded the Ghana Empire south of Morocco, bringing Islam to West Africa for the first time in history. But that's not all. He's also often credited with founding the beautiful city of Marrakesh, which went on to become the imperial capital of Morocco and the beautiful tourist attraction that the city is today. Ibn Umar would later die from a poison arrow while fighting as far south as the modern-day Gambia-Senegal region. But remember earlier I mentioned a conspiracy to whitewash the Moors? Well, if you go typing Ibn Umar today into Google, some desperate soul somewhere has labeled this image as Ibn Umar on Wikipedia's image commons. One problem, this is not Ibn Umar. How do we know? Well, the image is from a different chart altogether and is of a generic ambassador or Tuareg traveling to visit Mansa Musa, Emperor of Mali in the 1300s. Another way we know the creator of this map certainly didn't intend this to be Ibn Umar is that Mansa Musa didn't even exist till about another 300 years after Ibn Umar's death. But imagine how twisted you must be to go through all that trouble just to try and scrub out of a search engine's records the much more orthodox and historically accepted representation of a person, all because black people bother you that much. Just as well, we don't only have medieval charts to help us in identifying what Ibn Umar looked like. We have the medieval historian Ibn Idari writing in his famous and incredibly important book, A History of the Kings of Al-Andalus and Maghreb. In volume 4, Ibn Idari describes Ibn Umar's son, Prince Ibrahim ibn Abubakar. Ibn Idari claims the boy, quote, did not know his mother, but that he was, quote, black-skinned. So Ibn Umar gives birth to a black-skinned boy, is drawn like this on near ancient charts decades on from his lifetime, with a fat label over him so you can't miss him. But no, the Moors went black. Well then, what about the father of chivalry in North African and Arabic folklore, as he's depicted on the left hand of this 19th century Egyptian tattooing pattern? Okay, technically, very technically, he isn't a Moor, as Antara ibn Shaddād was born on the Arabian Peninsula and not North Africa. His father was a black Arab and his mother an Ethiopian known for a particularly dark complexion. However, the term Moor, even according to the Wikipedia article we began with, often encompassed those of Arabian descent when Europeans were first using the term. Now, why is Antara ibn Shaddād important? Simply because even the Encyclopædia Britannica recognized him as Islam and the Arab world's version of King Arthur. Although a historical warrior of great prowess and renown, his story had almost certainly been mixed in with legend and myth by the time he came to the attention of European academics. What we do know for a fact is that his mother was so dark she was called the Black Crow. As for Ibn Shaddād himself, he's described in a centuries-old Bedouin verse translated by 19th century Orientalist and academic Tarek Hamilton. Quote, black and swarthy like an elephant, flat-nosed, blear-eyed, harsh-featured, shaggy-haired, the corners of his lips hanging down and the inner angles of his eyes bloated, strong-boned, long-footed, he was like a fragment of a cloud, his ears immensely long, and with eyes whence flashed sparks of fire. Close quote. Based on that quote alone, you won't be surprised to know that Ibn Shaddād was notorious on the battlefield whilst managing to author a few poems himself in his lifetime, making him maybe the East's most famous warrior philosopher. His poems have been compiled by a European admirer, Wilhelm Alvart, in the divans of the 6 ancient Arabic poets. But Alvart wasn't Antara's only famed white admirer. Russian classical composer Korsakov wrote his Symphony No. 2 as an ode to Ibn Shaddād's legends. Okay, so the next 3 Moors on this list are from the Umayyad Empire. The Umayyads were remarkable for conquering Spain and Portugal during the 8th century, ushering in a new era of African-led science, architecture and culture to Europe. Number 4 Black Moor on our list then is none other than one of the men instrumental in founding and securing the Emirate of Cordoba, an offshoot of the Umayyad Caliphate that governed Spain when it was controlled by the Moors. Al-Hakam I was the Emir of Cordoba, that's all of modern-day Spain and Portugal, for almost 30 years, reigning from 796 to 822. His physical features are described by medieval historian Ibn Idari. Yep, him again. According to Ibn Dari, Al-Hakam was, quote, black-skinned, tall, with a beautiful profile and skinny, end quote. In his tome on the kings of Al-Andalus and the Maghreb, Ibn Dari incidentally describes two other rulers of the early Umayyad dynasty. He says of Abd al-Rahman II, the fourth ruler of the Emirate of Cordoba and son of Al-Hakam the Black, that he was, quote, tall, brown, having an aquiline nose, large black eyes, dark eyelids, and that he had a beard dyed with henna and katam. Fun fact, I hate that phrase, but this really is a fun fact. See this word asma? Well, it's sometimes inaccurately translated as dark. It more properly means brown in Arabic, and it's the same word that's used to describe black Africans in many ancient, quasi-ancient, and medieval Arabic texts. In fact, it's the same word that's used to describe this man, Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali. By who? By medieval Egyptian author, historian, and traveler Al-Makrizi, who says of Mansa Musa, the famous Emperor of Mali, he was a young man with a brown, asma skin, a pleasant face, and good figure. Alright, so you've heard how Ibn Dari describes two of the most important rulers of Spain when the Umayyad Moors ruled it. Why are they two of the most important? Well, Al-Hakam I put down numerous revolts against the Moors' authority in Spain during his time, helping to secure the empire's reach into Europe. And his son Abd al-Rahman II, according to Ibn Hayyan, a Muslim historian born in Moorish Spain, was, quote, the first of the Caliphs who glossed over the monarchy in Al-Andalus, clothed it with the pomp of majesty, and conferred a reverential character, choosing men suitable for functions, close quote. It's during the reign of Rahman's father Al-Hakam I when Ziryab, the black man and emancipated slave, is invited to be a key member of the Cordoba court. Ziryab himself is an extraordinary man with an extraordinary story, reputed to have introduced chess to Western Europe during his time in Moorish Spain. But he deserves his own video, so we'll resist the temptation to digress right now. Let me know in the comments whether you want that video. Now I'll only add one more emir from the era of the Umayyads to make Moorish ruler number 6, who was a black African man. Ibn Dari also describes for us Al-Mundir, the 6th ruler of the Emirate of Cordoba, as being brown-skinned. But wait, he adds a crucial bit of detail just in case anyone needed more convincing. Ibn Dari tells us also that Al-Mundir was, quote, kinky-haired. 3, 2, 1. Dude, being called a Moor, coming from Africa, having your great-granddaddy called black, you being called brown with kinky hair, don't mean the Moors were ever. This is the type of logic you only get when it comes to African history. But remember I told you somebody is trying to delete history? Here's my proof. See this flag? It's supposed to represent the I Quattro Moro. That's Italian for the 4 Moors. But it's only through legend that the 4 Moors have come to be mixed up with Italy. In fact, the legend goes back to the historical Battle of Alcaraz, in which Peter I of Aragon in 1096 defeated an alliance of Moors and Christians. This painting is one of the earliest representations of the battle's aftermath we have. The white king you can see there is supposed to be Peter I of Aragon of Spain. Story goes that after a 2-year siege to reclaim the city of Huesca from the Moors, the King of Aragon finally won the day, defeating 4 great Moorish kings or generals, whose decapitated heads you can see being presented to the Spanish king. But some have conjectured that the defeat of the 4 Moors may more accurately be a reference to a different battle, the Battle of Kutanda, taking place about 25 years after Alcaraz. Reason being that 4 Moorish kings were specifically mentioned in the earliest account of the Battle of Kutanda and not Alcaraz. These Moors were said to have allied with Abu Ishaq Ibrahim ibn Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the Almoravid prince, who himself was said to be the son of a black Berber concubine. But the Battle of Kutanda was against this king, Alfonso I the Battler, and not his brother Peter the Great of Aragon. Now the Moors were said to be outnumbered and defeated by Alfonso's troops and their French allies at Kutanda, something called the Chronicon Sancti Maxenti Pictavensis describes the battle. Quote, in the year 1120, Count William of Poitiers, the Duke of the Aquitanians and the King of Aragon Alfonso I the Battler, fought with Abraham or Ibrahim and 4 other kings of Spain in the field of Cotanda. They completely overcame and killed 15,000 of the Almoravids Moabitarum and took countless prisoners. They seized 2,000 camels and countless other beasts and subdued a very large number of castles. In fact, this defeat of the Moors was said to be so crushing that it birthed the saying, as bad as Kutanda. Now, I've checked a few references and I'm inclined to agree with those that link the defeat of the 4 Moors to Kutanda as opposed to Alcaraz. Here's why. For the most part, 4 names tend to pop up. These are Abu Muhammad ibn Tinagmar al-Lamtuni of Grenada, Abu Yaqub Yintan ibn Ali of Murcia, Ibn Zarada of Lerida, and Azun ben Galbun of Molina. But in some accounts of Kutanda, Ibn Zarada is left out, and you only get the other 3 names. Now that would explain why some of the earliest versions of the 4 Moors as depicted on the crests and flags are actually 3 and not 4, like this one here. It's only after the establishment of the Kingdom of Sardinia as a colony or protectorate of the Spanish Kingdom of Aragon that the 4 Moors are adopted as a coat of arms by Sardinia. Once again, I've put a link in the description if you want to look into this history yourself. But by now, you'll see why I claim history is being rewritten. Ostensibly, we guess, in the name of political correctness, some Sardinian authorities are now removing the black Moors on their crests and flags and replacing them with white figures. But the Trill and the Black are not buying it. Why not? Well, wouldn't it be far better to educate the masses on a time when Europeans held blacks in high regard, or at least respected them as equal human beings, capable of the same military, political and scientific ingenuity as themselves, so much so that they ruled over regions today deep into the heartland of Europe before being eventually ousted? Instead, Wikipedia does this, an article, go read it yourself, which does its best to hide any link of the word Moors to black people. It even skips the link of the word altogether to the color black and tells you only about the word being originally used by the ancient Phoenicians to mean Westerner. That's probably true, but why skip about a whole couple of thousand years after the Phoenicians in which the Greeks, Romans and medieval writers are telling you the word has come to mean black of skin? That's like me giving you a lowdown on the turkey bird and giving you a spiel on how it's native to the Americas, but missing out the fact a domesticated variety bred in Turkey was often sold in Europe, thus leading us to calling it a turkey today. Thanks for the geography of the Americas, bud, but most likely when my ancestors first used the word, can you tell me why and what they were referring to? Nah, here's a map of the Amazon. Anywho, I'm pretty bad at analogies. If you can do better, please put it in the comments below. Suffice to say, you combine Wikipedia's deliberate obfuscation with shoddy DNA analysis commonly done by disingenuous institutions, as famously outed by the eminent Professor Christopher Ehret, and quite often you're getting a result that was pre-planned from the beginning. The worst among us being emboldened to say the most ignorant, ill thought out things with the shamelessness of a pig who believes he's a peacock. But here's the good news I promised you at the beginning. Because of channels like Trill Black, the narrative is being corrected. All you have to do is help us out where you can. It's absolutely crucial to support those of us genuinely trying to correct the imbalanced narrative of history that helps to perpetuate the imposed inferiority of others. So once again, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Anyway, till the next time, we're keeping it trill, no doubt.